welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back after 2 missed live broadcasts on the channel, and not intentionally missed, but out of sheer circumstances. So I did miss out on you all, guys, but I hope you're doing well. I hope everything is okay with you. I hope you've had a wonderful weekend. I know it's not been a wonderful weekend for Arsenal fans, given that your team has just lost to Liverpool, which is never good. But then Manchester United fans have had a better weekend. Real Madrid fans, Liverpool fans, Barcelona are up a goal to nil against Rayo Vallecano. So that goal scored by Lamine Yamal in the 40th minute. So really, I mean, unless you're a Manchester City fan, Arsenal, Aston Villa, or Fulham, then there's a lot to be happy about, particularly as far as this weekend is concerned. So it's good to be back, anyways. It's good to be back, guys. Like I said, I do extend my sincere apologies. I did miss yesterday morning's podcast. I also missed the broadcast for Friday night, all out of not because I had intended this, but particularly because of other life engagements or commitments. You could call it that. Hi, bye. I know Pedri. I know Pedri, you're enjoying the Barcelona game, so I know that's why you can't stay for long. I know you're watching the Barcelona game. I'm also following up on the updates of that game, so it's good. It's all good. Maybe you will come back and we engage in halftime, and you give us a brief about halftime. What would have really transpired? You can come back and summarize it for us. Anyways, allow me to have our audios tested. Make sure everything does check out before we continue any further. And as far as this particular broadcast is concerned, this particular evening, but I think we're good to go. I think we are good to go. Where do we start it all? It's been crazy on the transfer scene. It's been madness as far as weekend football is concerned. But I think there should be maybe a couple of places here and there to start with. We're into the 4 minutes of added time for that game between Barcelona and Rayo Vallecano. In as far as this evening is concerned, in any case, it should be halftime by now. Yes, we're into halftime. So if Pedro, you're still with us, kindly give us a halftime brief on what did transpire. I did not watch the entire first half. I'd only just hooked onto it, and shortly then I was diverted to a video call, and that's when Lamine Yamal scored from the spot kick. So kindly indulge us and give us a halftime brief of what you've made of that game so far. Then quickly, but as we wait for maybe Pedri to respond, if he's still with us, allow us, make the trip to go to the Premier League, because that's where I want us to start. Manchester City's downfall did continue today as they lost by 2-1 after having taken a lead through Braut Erling Haaland in the 34th minute, with Omar Mamouche providing a cheeky assist in that game to give Manchester City the lead. But a 67th minute penalty by James Milner cancelled out Manchester City's lead. And if I'm being honest, in the second half, they didn't look any good. And Gruda, thanks to Kaoru Mitoma's assist, scored in the 89th minute to ensure that they walked away, to ensure that Fabian Hasler's side walked away with all 3 points. And they did not look decent. The positive news that they can take out of this game is that we are seeing Pedri start a game for Manchester City for the first time since September last year. Was it September or October? I think I need to be sure about that. As far as I remember, it was was it early October or late September last season? Yes, it was September. So it was September 22nd in actual sense. So ever since September 22nd, 2024, that's the last time Rodri had been in the starting 11 for Manchester City, and they started with a pretty decent squad. So what he did was swap Nico Gonzalez with Rodri and Tijan Reinders, Bernardo Silva, Omar Mamouche, Bart Erling Haaland, Oscar Bobran, Atonori Johnstones, Kushanov, and Matthias Nunes. Again, I do not know why that was the case, because you have Ruben Diaz, who is a very, very good player, very good centre back. Why do you swap him out to change that partnership? Then Matthias Nunes starting ahead of Nico O'Reilly, and that kind of thing. Anyway, it's Pep Guardiola. Sometimes he is prone to overthinking games. And I'm not saying that should be the excuse for why they lost, or that should be entirely the reason. There's more to that. But it is part of it. I mean, you've just started the season. And we're not talking about him swapping out one player. He's swapping out a couple of those. You remember in the aftermath of their 4-0 victory against Wolverhampton Wanderers, against at Tottenham, for which our prediction had been a draw for that fixture. I kept telling you guys that the reason as why I thought that Tottenham stood a better chance of winning that game is because my expectation was he was going to tinker with his starting 11, and he did exactly just that. He tinkered with his starting 11, and the result didn't go his way. They ended up losing by 2-0 against Tottenham Hotspur. So today they've lost against Brighton, and that's 2 losses on the spin. Now, my feeling is that it's nothing for us to really worry about, because even last season they weren't the best of teams, but yet they still finished third on the Premier League table with only 3 points behind the second place Arsenal. I mean, we're going to speak about Arsenal in just a bit, but losing 2 games out of the first 3 is not a positive sign to really think about. And I mean, in any case, when you're a team like Manchester City, who is expected to compete for the Premier League title, while losing to Tottenham Hotspur could be understandable given the historical context of that battle or tie between Spurs and Manchester City. The one against Brighton is almost unforgivable, And I'm not saying it's as good as done as dusted for Manchester City this season, That's not what I'm trying to say. But the point is that they need to do more. They need to do more to try and fight back. But today they just didn't do that. They did not do that, and it's quite very. It's not very worrying, but it is concerning in a way. I hope you guys can understand the difference, between it being concerning and it being worrying, in one way or the other. That's how I'm looking at it. That's how I look at this, that you have a team who is considered, by the virtue of its previous performances for the last couple of seasons, that is expected to be a title contender. And 3 games into the season, they've already lost 2. So it's not a very positive side. But they'll be hoping to pick themselves up really quickly. But I thought Brighton were the better side in that second half, predominantly, in my view. Carlos Baleba in that midfield, Jack Henschelwood, I mean, they look good. Yankuba Minte had a very good game. Kaum Mitoma didn't shine that much, but again, not a bad game for him to have, So Joel Veltman, Van Hickey, Lewis Dunk, Maximi Di Cupia. This one is new, Remember the let go of Pavis Estupinan. He's going to join AC Milan, So really, that was another loss posted for them. So that means 3 games, 2 losses. Not a good sign for Manchester City. But anyways, they were not the only losers of the day, because there was a surprising result, at least on my side, when West Ham United beat up against Nottingham Forest by 3-0. We're talking about a West Ham United side that had, struggled through the start of their season, having lost their first 2 games, including losing terribly, I think by 5-1 to Chelsea. Then they lost the other game, their first game that they lost. And so, like I said, in any case, if I had gone for anything like a prediction, it wouldn't have been that West Ham win that game. I do not remember what exactly my prediction was, but trust me, it was not that West Ham win that fixture. Given that Nottingham Forest had won some of their earlier fixtures. You remember they beat up against Brentford on match day 1 by 3 goals to 1, and then on that very weekend, West Ham did find themselves on the losing end of things and trying to find their results. Yes, they lost to Sunderland by 3 goals to 0. Yes, you remember now. Then they came to match day 2 and lost 5-1 against Chelsea. 8 goals conceded in the opening 2 fixtures of the game. And it was no surprise that they were bottom of the table. But guess what? I did not get to watch the game, but the results, I get the feeling that the result is not one that paints the entire picture of the game, because those goals did not come until after the 80-something minutes. You look at that score sheet, and it's after the 84th minute that Gerard Bowen scores, thanks to Somerville's assist, and then Lucas Paqueta steps up from the penalty spot to make it 2-0 and goes on to kiss the badge in celebration as a way to say, I'm here to stay, because that came in the midst of a transfer offer from Aston Villa, which is a loan deal with an option to buy, or with an obligation to buy. So I mean, we're going to get to speak to transfers in just a bit, but so you take, maybe that's a takeaway for West Ham fans who may think maybe Lucas Paqueta is on the verge of leaving them. If kissing of the badge means anything, then that should scream a bit of loyalty in itself, because oftentimes that is what it can mean. Then, of course, Callum Wilson scoring his first goal in West Ham colours, having joined as a free agent recently from Newcastle in the first minute of added time. And that was because Lucas Paqueta's penalty came just 4 minutes later, and then 3 minutes later they got the third and they won the game by 3 goals to 0. So anyways, all I can say is congratulations, Graham Potter. I know the kind of relief he must have felt on his shoulders, especially knowing that we are going into the international break. You never want to lose a game when we are going into the international break, because then you become the subject of literally almost all discussions for the next fortnight until we get to the previews of match day 4. Then also in one of the midway kickoffs of Sunday, we did have Arsenal lose to Liverpool by 1-0. But before we digest that, I mean, Aston Villa, what on God's green earth was that poor performance at home in front of the Villa Park fans? Joan Felipe Mateta stepping up to the penalty spot to score, to make it 1-0. That was in the 21st minute. Of course, you had Emi Martinez withdrawn out of that squad for Aston Villa, and they went with Marco Bizzotti because Emi Martinez is subject to transfer speculation from Manchester United. Manchester United are trying to sign him should they fail in their attempt to sign Lamens Simmons. So they are really, really pushing to get a goalkeeper. Manchester United are really, really trying to push to get a goalkeeper. So, and Emi Martinez is one of those goalkeepers that they are targeting. And because of that, Unai Emery opted to leave him out of the starting 11. I know earlier on, and this came after the player expressed his desire to join Manchester United after personal terms were agreed. So Manchester United have already agreed personal terms with Emi Martinez. I know on the side of the Royal Antwerp goalkeeper, personal terms are not an issue, and negotiations continue there with Lamens, Sene Lamens. They continue with club to club to try and find a deal. So now Aston Villa also. This is interesting. Once Manchester United agreed personal terms with Emi Martinez over a potential move, remember they did make an approach to Aston Villa back in July. Yes, that was a loan deal I think with an obligation to buy, and Aston Villa turned that down. But we know that the transfer window officially closes tomorrow. That's 1st September. So now it's a bit of a rush hour to get certain deals over the line. And we'll be speaking about many of those perhaps tomorrow and perhaps also in part of this broadcast. And so Aston Villa are literally trying to use Manchester United as their identification eye for their next goalkeeper. And they've made a formal approach to Royal Antwerp for Sene Lammens. And he's the main option alongside Diego Costa in case Dubi Martinez ends up leaving the club. So remember, those are two goalkeepers that Manchester United did target. Diego Costa, that's the #1 goalkeeper for the Portuguese national team. So that's one to keep our eyes on in the coming days, But anyways, that notwithstanding, in the second half, McGahey, one of the unlikely suspects, one for whom Liverpool made an official bid worth £35 million to try and sign him from Crystal Palace, was the one that stepped up and scored in the 68th minute. In any case, Ibrahim Konate's injury in that game against Arsenal should perhaps force Liverpool to fast track this move. Now, Crystal Palace did not decline their offer, but came back with a counter proposal of £35 million plus £5 million in expected add-ons and a 10% future sell-on clause in what they are requesting for. But in the 68th minute, McGahey did score a brilliant goal, by the way, to make it 2-0. While in the 78th minute, it was Ismail Sarr at the end of Caesar cross to head that ball into the back of the net as Unai Emery's side got beat by 3-0 at Villa Park. A very, very unexpected result, I must say. I mean, we're talking about a team for whom, in my predictions, I did predict them to finish fifth, as high as fifth on the Premier League table. But their start to the season does not show that they will end up that way, because remember, in their opening game, I think the opening game they drew with Newcastle in a goalless draw, and then on match day 2 they lost to Brentford by 1-0. So literally they only have 1 point on board, and that's just what it is. That's just what it is. Unfortunately, it's happening that way. Then, of course, in the biggest game of the weekend, that's on Super Sunday, we did have Liverpool beat up against Arsenal. It was a game of two halves, in my opinion. Arsenal dominating the first half, Liverpool dominating the second half, and it was a game that was decided by a single moment, the way we did see, literally, if you go back to Arsenal's victory against Real Madrid last season, in the first leg, in the quarterfinals of the UEFA Champions League, dead ball situations. And once again, it was Dominic Szoboszlai that stepped up to a free kick, I think in the 80th minute, to score, quite from distance, by the way, in the 83rd minute, yes, to score to make it 1-0, and that's the goal that turned out to be the match winner. Now, if I were to point a finger in blame for Arsenal's loss, I'd put it singularly on David Raya. Forget what the manager would have done in terms of his team selection in the starting 11 or otherwise, or anything, or how quick he should have made some changes to what I believe should have been the case. David Raya. Why? Because the way he does set up in free kicks is so poor. I do not know why he always banks on something that does not work. Now, when Arsenal set up for a free kick that they've conceded, David Raya will set up his wall. And then what he will do, he will move 3/4 away from the side, from one side of the goal, 3/4 away from where he believes that his wall is trying to block, and then push himself to one side. Now, that's something that has caused him to concede thrice in set pieces, in free kicks. Today against Dominic Szoboszlai, you go back last season at Old Trafford, in that 1-1 draw between Arsenal and Manchester United. You go back to Arsenal's victory against West Ham United. I think it was Emerson who scored that free kick, because he leaves a lot of space, and for some reason he thinks he's going to make 1, 2, 3 steps and suddenly he will be at the end of the ball. He just doesn't get there on time. It doesn't work. Because for a goalkeeper, once you need to make more than 1, 2, 3 steps to try and save the ball, that third step being what pushes you to go into flight, you're bound to lose it. And basically, that's what's happened in the last, in those times he's conceded those free kicks. So it's a game that was decided by one moment, really, because there's not any other moment that you can really, really pick up on and say, this was a maybe, or what, or this came close. Of course, Arsenal, like I said, in the first half, they dominated all affairs. They had, I think, about 6 attempts on goal, one being on target. That was the attempt by Noni Madueke during a set-piece play. All the others fell short. Then Liverpool in the second half were the ones really, really pushing. Arsenal had to begin, to defend. They had their moments going forward, but they did not create any clear-cut chances to try and score. The one that came close was, I think, a low cross that was brought in by Noni Madueke, and it was well defended by Joe Gomez. So really, you look at that. So in a way, Victor Gyökeres wasn't getting onto the ball enough, and even the few times that he got onto the ball, Liverpool defended really well. I mean, Ibrahim Konate and Virgil van Dijk could have easily walked off that pitch as men of the match, but I would give that to Dominic Szoboszlai, because he was all over the place. He started at right back. He played really, really well there, defending against Gabriel Martinelli. Even when they brought in Eberechi Eze, I thought he did well. He had his moments going forward. He really, really tried to influence play. He was, taking lead on Liverpool's set-piece plays and everything in that regard. So he had a very, very beautiful and wonderful game. And for me, he deserved the man of the match accolade on the day. I thought he was the best player that there was out there on the pitch overall, So David Raya needs to sit down with Inaki, the goalkeeping coach, and they correct something when it comes to that. Because for me, I believe, first of all, I do not know. It never works. Why do goalkeepers try to block the side of the ball with that wall, their own side? And usually that's what pushes them to go 3 quarters in the opposite direction to try and have the better side of the ball, And then when the ball is put to the other side, they try to rush to get to it, which never works. So David Raya is, culprit to that. But anyways, that was the result at Anfield. Arsenal go into the international break with a loss. That means 3 games played, 2-1 and 1 loss, and Liverpool remain unbeaten in as far as this Premier League season is concerned. They are the reigning champions. They remain the favorites. It's their title to defend, but Arsenal should be giving themselves no excuses in that regard. Then, I mean, prior to this game, we were saying, they are vulnerable to conceding. They've conceded 2 goals in the opening 2 fixtures. Arsenal did not do enough to show that they were going to score. First of all, personally, I wasn't content with the fact that Mikel Arteta started the game cowardly. What do I mean by that? You have 2 number 6s and another number 8 starting in your midfield. They lack that midfield creativity right down the spine. Once again, they chose to go to the wings, to try and rely on the wings. When you look at that first half, most of their moments were trying to come from the right wing on the side of Noni Madueke. And then Gabriel Martinelli, again, was sort of struggled through the game in that sense. So they could not create something down that spine. They did not have it. They did not have that. When Martin Odegaard came on, it was Martin Odegaard, That's all I can say. He tried to, he led the press, he did some things right, but it just never fell for him to try and find a way he can create a moment for himself. It just never fell for him. Max Dorman came on, Milos Kakes defended really, really well against him. I wasn't, at the time when he was brought on, I wasn't for it that he be brought on. I thought maybe Ethan Nwaneri should have been brought on, but never, happened that way. The only positive I could pick up on the side of Arsenal is Christian Mosquera, because this one came early on as the first substitute, I think in the opening 5 minutes of the game, when William Saliba had to be withdrawn through injury, and he stepped up. He did really, really well. I mean, I'll give him an 8 out of 10 kind of performance, you know. Christian Mosquera, he looked decent for a player that they got for about what, 13 million pounds. I mean, that was a very, very solid performance for him. But anyways, no hope lost. But we're going to the international break with Liverpool leading the pile with 9 points. Chelsea second, 7 points, and still unbeaten. Arsenal and Tottenham Hotspur following third and fourth places respectively, with all at 6 points, just as much as the 5th place as Everton and Sunderland, as well as Bournemouth in 7th place, all at 6 points. Because they've all lost a game, and they've all lost a game and then won 2 fixtures. Then down further that pile is Crystal Palace, who have drawn 2 and won 1, and they're still unbeaten. Then Manchester United have drawn 1, lost 1, and won the other. So that takes us to the Saturday results from the Premier League, where Manchester United equally were very unconvincing winners. Why do I say unconvincing? Is because while they dominated the game, I didn't think they had done enough that they deserve to win. Now, they dominated majority of the affairs of the game. They had multiple loads, I think over 20 shots on goal. But still, they were not clinical. They were not clinical on the day. So they won the game by 3 goals to 2, thanks to a Colin own goal, then Brian Mbeumo, and then a penalty by Bruno Fernandes, which I did blame to the Burnley player. I mean, what are you doing pulling Mamadou Diallo? I mean, 90 minutes are done. You're headed for added time. You're tagging somebody's shot in the area. What on God's green earth are you thinking? Lyle Foster had scored to restore parity in the 55th minute, to cancel out Collins' own goal in the 27th minute. And then Joshua Anthony also scored in the 66th minute to cancel out Brandon Mbeumo's 57th minute strike, which was, by the way, a brilliant goal. Literally, I mean, easy to score, but I mean, that's easier said than done. But Burnley will only have themselves to blame for that one. But when you look at those statistics, Manchester United dominated most of the affairs of the game. They had 6 shots on target. They had 13 off target. That's as many as 19. Their blocked shots were 7, as many as 7. So that clearly tells you how dominant they were, with the 62% ball possession and compared to 38 of Burnley. So when you look at crosses, they had as many as 13 crosses compared to Burnley's 1. And when you look at corner kicks, they had 7 as compared to Burnley's 1. So they dominated majority of the affairs of the game. However, it wasn't a convincing victory for Manchester United because they were not clinical, like I said. And then of course the weekend kicked off with the shambolic VAR display or officiating display in that game against Fulham. Fulham had a solid goal cancelled out for what was deemed to be an earlier foul against, I think, Joao Pedro, which was never meant to be a foul in any case. That's why you had the referee who was on VAR in that game, Michael Shrewsbury, being withdrawn from the game between Liverpool and Arsenal because he made an unnecessary call. He basically got himself out there intent on determining the result of the game, not based on its merits. So I know our prediction had been a 2-1 victory for Chelsea, but given how shambolic that game was officiated, I mean, it is what it is. Of course, it hurts Chelsea. Sorry, it hurts Fulham that they got to lose the game very unfairly, So Joshua King's goal was cancelled out. Then Joao Pedro did score thanks to an Enzo Fernandez assist, and then subsequently him scoring a penalty, which again was questionable. So it was that kind of game, really. It was that kind of game, and not much was very, very convincing. I mean, you have a player who is dribbling and is turning, makes an accidental stump on the other player's foot. They go on to score, and you cancel out that goal to call it back for a foul, you know, to call it back for a foul. I mean, what's that? What kind of nonsense was that? You know, what Webb has called Fulham, has contacted Fulham, blah, blah, blah. I mean, the on-field referee, how stupid do you have to be? How does the on-field referee, how stupid does he have to be? I mean, it is your judgment to make at the end of the day. It is your judgment to make at the end of the day. You're on the field. You've seen the replay. What convinces you that while you had not called it earlier as a foul, then suddenly it's become a foul? It is as simple as telling your colleague, look, he's dribbled, he's made so almost a 360 turn. He's had a stamp on on I think it was Trevor Chaloba's foot, but I can't call that for a foul. You know, as simple as that. So while we can blame Mike Shrewsbury all day, the referee on the turf takes an equal fair share of responsibility. We cannot keep defending referees, you know, having been misled by their VAR, you know, assistants as though they do not have heads of their own, you know, look at things. You ought to have a head of your own. You ought to have a head of your own. And I didn't think he had his head. I mean, if he had it, it did not help him on the day. It did not help him one bit. So that was shambolic. Because, you see, they need to debunk this idea that just because you've been called to the monitor to assess the situation or to look at the situation further, that it should automatically mean that you change your decision. That should not be the case. That should not be the call. And basically, as soon as he walks over there, he's already thinking, I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to change my decision. You didn't call it because you didn't think it was a foul. Maybe you had not seen it, but now you've even seen it more closely. What makes you think it's a foul? Now, when it comes to the penalty, here's what I'll say. And it's not because the ball did not hit the player's arm. It did hit his arm. But I've always said, when players are playing, it's not like you can unplug off your arms and drop them somewhere and defend the ball and then suddenly pick them up. He jumps to block a shot. Unfortunately for him, as part of support, his arms go up with him. And the ball ends up hitting his arm, which was defined as the arm being in an unnatural position. And it's awarded as a penalty. But for me, it's not like when he jumped, his arms were this, you know, it's from elbow, the way you often jump and you have your arms, you know. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Maasai jump or the Kejongs do their jump. They usually do it in such a manner, oftentimes holding a stick. They usually do it in such a manner that their arms are by their body. Now, oftentimes, you know, it's not like it was a set piece play that players had already arms stuck to their bodies, you know. It wasn't that. So for me, it was another shambolic, you know, kind of decision. But the reason as why I can't excuse him on that one is because consistently they've made it as such. Now, FIFA and all minders of the game, in terms of training these officials, should be teaching these referees more about common sense. What's the moment of play? Does the player stretch out his arm with the intent to block the ball? Or is it a reflex that he's going up? Now, in some way, it's a bit of a gray area, depending on interpretation, but we know what is intentional and what is not. At least we know that. Because I keep giving the example of Presido Kimpembe in the UEFA Champions League when he did consider a penalty that was, I think, converted by Marcus Rashford. Stand to be corrected on the season, but probably around 2021 or prior to that, you know. And then it's given as a penalty, and I'm thinking to myself, does he have eyes at the back of his head? No, he obviously doesn't. He doesn't. And that's why it shouldn't be a penalty, you know? And yet they keep it as such. They keep it as such. So it, it, it's often disturbing. It's often disturbing for me. I always feel, yes, you can fault for players for many stupid things that they could do on the turf. But when it comes to handball, I mean, if they had the opportunity to come into the field, onto the pitch without their arms, and they leave only the goalkeeper to have his arms, then we would acknowledge that. We would acknowledge that and say, look, we would have no excuses if somebody smuggled their arms into the area, you know. But anyways, it is what it is. It is what it is. So, still on Saturday, as far as the Premier League is concerned, of course, Man United winning their first game of the season 3-2, and Chelsea winning 2-0. Sunderland beat up against Brentford by 2-1. Well, surprisingly, Bournemouth beat up against Tottenham Hotspur at home by 0-0. That was at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. I did not see that result coming, I must be honest. Newcastle were involved in another goalless draw against Leeds United, while Wolverhampton Wanderers lost to Everton by 3-2. Tottenham Hotspurs losing to a very dominant performance from AFC Bournemouth. I mean, Anton Semenyo was all over the place in that game. I mean, very beautiful game of play. They really came out. Andoni Iraola had his team well drilled to face this Tottenham Hotspur side, who are man markers kind of, who use the man marking kind of thing. Evan Nilsson's 50th minute goal was enough to decide the game. Andoni Iraola's side walk away with all 3 points. Meanwhile, Marcus Rashford is being brought on in this game against Barcelona. Sorry, in the Barcelona game against Rayo Vallecano, that they continue to lead by 0-0. Rafinha is being withdrawn, does come off with a bit of an happy face. But yeah, like I said, Bournemouth were really dominant in that game. I thought Tottenham had a very good start to their campaign. When you look at Tottenham, they only had 1 shot on target versus Bournemouth is 6. Shots off target were 3 for Tottenham compared to Bournemouth is 9. Shots blocked was 1 for Tottenham compared to Bournemouth is 5. So clearly, I mean, if it wasn't for Guillermo Vicario, then Tottenham would have conceded many more. Corner kicks, Bournemouth had 8, Tottenham had 0. So again, that's another telltale sign of how dominant really and how brilliant they were. That's AFC Bournemouth, even away from home. Vicario made 5 saves, while on the other side, George Petrovic only made 1, you know. So, I mean, beautiful result there for AFC Bournemouth, and one that I personally had not seen coming, I must acknowledge. But so, day one, that was it. Then, like I said, Wolverhampton Wanderers lost to Everton thanks to Beto. Jack Grealish once again providing another burst of assists on his second time of calling in as far as Everton are concerned. You know, he provided the assist for Beto's goal in the 7th minute. Then he provided also the assist for Keenan Brisbane Hall's 55th minute goal that made it 3-1 at the time, because earlier on, Ilman Ndiaye in the 33rd minute had scored to make it 2-1 at the time, with Keenan Brisbane Hall providing the assist. In between there, Chan had scored to make it 1-1. That was in the 21st minute, while a goal by Gomez had in the 79th minute had made it 3-2, but eventually that turned out to be, that was by Joe Gomez. Yes, by Joe Gomez. He scored in the 79th minute to make it 3-2, and that's how the game ended. So beautiful, beautiful result there for David Moyes, and congratulations to Team Everton on that regard. Then in the Spanish La Liga, Atletico de Madrid had another shambolic performance, sharing the spoils in a 1-1 draw against Deportivo Alves. Real Oviedo beat up against Real Sociedad by a goal to nil, while Sevilla beat up against Girona by 2-0. Real Madrid beat up against Real Mallorca by 2-1. Kylian Mbappe had a goal cancelled out by by VAR, while Adagula scored, as well as Vinicius Junior, for goals that turned out to be the match winners. Of course, Kylian Mbappe had 2 goals cancelled out after VAR review, as well as Adagula, the other goal scorer that had his goal cancelled out. So really, then Moriti did score what turned out to be a mere consolation for Rayo Mallorca in that game. So, excuse me. So those were some of the results from from the Spanish La Liga. Then in the German Bundesliga, Werder Bremen came from 3 goals, 1 down to against when there were 10 men, having received the red card in the 63rd minute, to share the spoils against Bayer Leverkusen in a 3-3 draw. And news coming out of Germany is that Erik ten Hag could be sacked after only 2 games being managed in the German Bundesliga. Now, for me, while the results dating to as far back as preseason have not been pretty for Bayer Leverkusen under the charges of Erik ten Hag, I think that would be perhaps a little too quick a judgment, because we're talking about a manager who's lost literally half of the squad that there was last season. And when you look at players, just now says Arsenal's title hopes always last as long as my New Year's resolutions. That's an interesting take on things. An interesting take on things for you, from you just now. How are you doing? How has been your day? But I do understand. I don't know if you are an Arsenal fan, but if you are, I would understand the frustration. Meanwhile, Rayo Vallecano are finding the equalizer against Barcelona here, and it's 1 apiece. So really, really funny way that you put it. Anyways, it's too early in the season. I do not think one loss is what is going to define Arsenal's season going forward. Yes, there are so many things they need to correct, but more predominantly, it's their creativity. They need to be creating more and more chances, which they did not seem to do today in that loss against Liverpool. When you look at the chances they created, it just wasn't enough. Wow, what a beautiful goal for an equalizer. That's a beautiful, beautiful goal. Really hits the inside of the crossbar and down back onto the floor and into the nets. I mean, beautiful goal there that Rayo Vallecano have scored to make it 1-1 with just a couple of minutes left to the clock. If we're being honest, couple of minutes. But Barcelona, it's never over until it is over. So I'm still telling you guys about Bayer Leverkusen. They lost. I don't know what happened to them. Number 1 goalkeeper, but they signed Mark Flaken. 2, Jonathan Tah out. Granit Xhaka out. Jeremy Frimpong out. I mean, Piero Hincap is on his way to Arsenal. Then which other player? There's another player that they did lose. So you've lost so many good players, and these were team starters. Florian Wirtz, yes, is the other player. Was very, very integral to that team. 10 assists and 10 goals and 12 assists last season. I mean, arguably their most creative player in the last 2 seasons, because in their title-winning season of 2023-2024, he scored 11 goals and provided 11 assists. So you lost him, and then suddenly you're literally asking Erik ten Hag to pull a rabbit out of the bag, or or out of his pocket. My view is that give him more time. Give him more time. He's not going to do the magic that Xabi Alonso did when he came to the club back in, I think, October 2022. And they were, I think, second from bottom. And then he had them finish within the top six, and they qualified for the UEFA Europa League for the subsequent season. Then the subsequent season won them the German Bundesliga, the first, and the DFB Pokal. I do not think he's going to be the kind of manager that pulls that kind of magic, especially in this Bayern Munich kind of era that for which they continue to strengthen season in, season out, and they have strengthened more than any other team in any case, in my opinion. They've already signed Luis Diaz. They're trying to, I don't know, they're still haggling with Chelsea to get a deal done for Nicholas Jackson. Everything had been approved. And then because Liam Delap suffered that, thigh injury that could keep him out for for 6 to 8 weeks, possibly, they've had to sort of rescind that to say, no, we need the player back, shouldn't complete the move, or unless you're doing turning it into a permanent deal. I mean, how bad kind of negotiation is that, So, but that notwithstanding, they've also turned their attention for Ademola Lookman to try and sign him. So then they got Jonathan Tah, like I told you. So they look good. Remember, Jamal Musialas broke his leg during the FIFA Club World Cup, so they're looking to add in a player, because they know even when he returns, he may not be, just as good, or he may not pick up quickly. As much as they would have loved it to be. So really. Anyways, so for me, that's my feeling about Bayer Leverkusen, but also squandering a 3-1 victory against a team that has, that is a playerless, is also almost inexcusable. But that's football. That's the beauty of it. Because Koulibaly has scored the equalizer in that one, But that's the nature of football. And that's why we love it the way it is. That you get those kinds of results. You get those kinds of results. Anyways, so Erik ten Hag is living already on thin ice. Remember, we just concluded a week in which former Manchester United manager Jose Mourinho was sacked. Sorry, guys, we're still into the 73rd minute of this game between Barcelona and Rayo Vallecano. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was sacked at Besiktas, Jose Mourinho at Fenerbahce, and now if they do sack Erik ten Hag at Bayer Leverkusen, really, that would be a full 3-on-60 for former Manchester United managers going into the international break. But he is living on thin ice. He is living on thin ice. It's not looking pretty for him down in the German Bundesliga, where he is playing straight. Oh, Joan Garcia with an immaculate save to keep it 1 apiece in this game between Barcelona and Rayo Vallecano. What a beautiful run. Oh. Anyways, in the other games, Hoffenheim lost to Eintracht Frankfurt by 3-1. Hoffenheim were at home. RB Leipzig beat up against Heidenheim by 2-0. Stuttgart beat up against Borussia Mönchengladbach by 1-0. While Werder Bremen, like I told you, shared the spoils with a 3-3 draw. Augsburg lost to Bayern Munich at 3-2. That was really, really close. So while in the Italian Serie A, Bologna beat up against Como by 1-0. Parma and Atlanta shared the spoils in a 1-1 draw, while Napoli beat up against Cagliari in a 1-0 victory. Pisa lost to AZ Roma by a goal to nil. So those were some of the key results there. PSG beat up against Toulouse by 6-3. Nantes beat up against Auxerre by a goal to nil, while Lille beat up against Lorient by 7-1. And for the game for PSG's victory, João Neves, Bradley Bacola, Ousmane Dembele. João Neves scored a hat-trick. Ousmane Dembele scored a brace, that one, while Bradley Bacola was the other on target for that game. So those were the goal scorers for PSG. I mean, João Neves with a hat-trick. How often do you get to hear that? Anyways, it is what it is. Quickly, we're into the 77th minute of this game between Barcelona and Rayo Vallecano, but it's still one apiece. I don't know. I still have faith that Barcelona will come back into it and possibly win it. That's my feeling. I know Pedri must be watching these minutes with a bit of tension. He's a Barcelona fan. But on the front of transfers, a lot is happening, a lot is movement. Manchester United are still blocking that move from Kobe Mainu, who wants to go out on loan. He doesn't want to leave Manchester United, he doesn't want to sever ties, but he's asked to leave on loan to try and go and ply his trade elsewhere. Then internal talks underway now at Crystal Palace to decide on McGahey as Liverpool are pushing. Liverpool are getting ready. Are ready to get the deal done for over £35 million plus a 10% future sell-on clause. Personal terms have already been agreed at the beginning of this month, or at the beginning of last month. Given that it's already midnight, so we're into September already. So like I told you, Crystal Palace came back with a counter offer of 35 plus £5 million on add-ons, and now today his squad, very beautiful, brilliant young defender. But like I told you, it's a World Cup season. He wants to ensure that he continues to play consistently, and that's why wherever he goes, he wants to guarantee his playing time in as far as his future is concerned, and the possibility of him having to feature for Liverpool, for England at the World Cup goes. This is news coming in from Germany saying Nicolas Jackson's move to FC Bayern Munich is 100% off. Decision made a few minutes ago. Bayern have officially pulled out of the deal. Jackson and his agent Ali Bratt will fly back to England. That's according to Florian Plettenberg. There saying that deal is off. That deal is off. I'm being quoted to have said that the deal is totally off, which is very, very unfortunate. Now, oftentimes we do ask for players to be loyal to clubs and to behave professionally when it comes to transfers. But somebody posed a question: when do players get to be loyal to? When do clubs get to be loyal to players? When do they get to honor their own agreements? Because we've had it one too many times that agreements have been reached upon in principle between clubs and players to let those players go when good offers come, and then clubs change their minds or change their stance on those deals. I mean, we know one too well about Johan Wissa and Brentford. He went out and put out a full-blown statement, trying to say his truth, how he had a meeting with club officials that they would let him go this summer, and he does acknowledge that a good proposal came from a Premier League team, and they turned it down. They blocked his move, So in this particular case, you have Nicolas Jackson, would just have told his surplus requirements. Literally, Enzo Maresca coming out to sing like a canary to the world of how he needs to find place elsewhere, pushing him to play with the reserves, not him not being in match day squads and all. And then suddenly one injury to Liam Delap, and then you've already sanctioned a loan deal with an option to buy or obligation, and then suddenly you're calling to change your mind. What kind of team spirit is Nicholas Jackson supposed to come back with? What kind of thought process is he going to return to the club with? Because in this particular case, I do not think he should be giving any what's us to Chelsea, because they've not treated him well. Because it's not like he was already playing and maybe being included in match day squads, and then Bayern Munich came with a good offer, and then you requested that he be allowed to leave. It wasn't that. It wasn't that at all. It was the other way around. So now the player has gotten himself a dream move, really, to go to Bayern Munich, and you're recalling it just because you've had one of your players injured? No way. No way. That's just horrible. That's just horrible. It shouldn't suffice. Then Fenerbahce are working on a deal to sign Manchester City goalkeeper Ederson Morales. That deal is equally being discussed. There are high chances that he could leave. And then Adrian Rabiot to AC Milan is here we go. That's according to Fabrizio Romano. Deal in place for a 10 million euro package. 4-year contract for Adrian Rabiot, set for a medical in Milano on Monday, authorized by Olympique Marseille, back with Maximo Allegri. Remember, Adrian Rabiot worked with Maximo Allegri at Juventus, and then he left as a free agent, ended up at Olympique Marseille. Nonsense. Anyways, that's something that is something that is progressing. Then also Chelsea reached a deal to sign Facundo Benanote from Brighton and Hove Albion on a season-long loan, no obligation to buy. So again, this is shambolic. Chelsea have reached a verbal agreement with Sunderland to bring back McKay from his loan. Decision made this afternoon, as he's now returning to Chelsea with immediate effect, all because one player suffered. Now, this is according to Fabrizio Romano. What that could potentially mean is that, because remember, last we had checked, Nicholas Jackson and his agents were refusing to fly back from Germany, so he was getting to stay and wait for a decision coming from Bayern Munich and stuff. And now and then looks like, because Chelsea have been scouring the markets to try and find a striker that they can replace Liam Delap with in the interim, but they weren't being so successful. So, given the fact that they had loaned McGuy to Sunderland, they've recalled him. Whether that was part of the clause in the contract, or now they're supposed to register him with the Premier League after Sunderland had registered. What kind of nonsense is this, Chelsea? Then Lorenzo Insigne is in talks with Parma as a free agent after leaving Toronto, so he could join Parma. I remember Parma Callasio are under the charges of a former assistant manager, Carlos Cuesta, at Chelsea. So that's also happening. Then Kevin is in London, has been in London since 9 p.m. With his agent to try and get a Fulham deal done. The total package agreed upon is in the region of 42 million euros to sign him from Shakhtar Donetsk. brilliant move there for Fulham, really. Anyway, that's all happening. That's all happening on the world of transfers or on the transfer front. I'm waiting for this game between Barcelona and Rayo Vallecano to be wrapped up before we can see it as, before we can call it tonight, because it's in the 84th minute at the moment. Actually, 86th minutes at the moment as we speak, and it's all happening. Actually, 87th minutes, and it is still one apiece. Then also, Fenerbahce are closing in on a deal to sign Marco Asensio from Paris Saint-Germain. This is a deal that we thought had earlier long term been agreed, and then something did not happen. Right? We're talking about Fenerbahce side that have since sacked their manager in Jose Mourinho. Oh, Rayo Vallecano thought had scored the winner. That call has been cancelled out. It may be subject to a VAR review, but it's been cancelled out. It's been ruled out due to an offside in the build-up to the call. Joan Garcia, offside. Anyways, it remains 1-1 at the moment. So Aston Villa had approached PSG to sign Marco Asensio, given that he spent part of last season out on loan at Villa Park, and yeah, so he seems to be destined to Fenerbahce, even though Aston Villa are really interested. That goal is undergoing a VAR review, but yeah, it's been confirmed for an offside, so the goal would stand. Otherwise, Barcelona have been living dangerously. But kudos to Joan Garcia, because he made a brilliant save in there. Then what more? I mean, as far as transfers are concerned, there's a lot, plenty happening. There's plenty happening on all fronts. And given that we missed two broadcasts, I wouldn't be really surprised. Anyways, if there's plenty that you think, then also Samuel Chukwueze is in London tonight to be ready in case of Fulham move gets done. Fulham are trying to also sign Samuel Chukwueze as well as Kevin from Shakhtar. So that one is happening. Literally, we'll have our players being disappointed by the close of the transfer window tomorrow when their deals have not been wrapped up. So then Manchester City's Brian Checky will be out for 2 months through injury. That's been confirmed as well. What else? Anyways, let's go to transfer gossip and speculation as compiled by BBC Sport at the moment. Newcastle United are willing to let Swedish striker Alexander Isak join Liverpool, provided the Reds submit a British transfer record fee of about £130 million. That's according to the Telegraph. Then Aston Villa have held talks with Manchester United over a move for England winger Jordan Sancho, 25. That's according to the Athletic. Then Aston Villa have also made an approach to Roy Antwerp Belgian goalkeeper Sene Lamens, 23, according to Fabrizio Romano. Then Bayern Munich have withdrawn their bid for Chelsea and Senegal striker Nicolas Jackson. That's according to Florian Plettenberg. While Tottenham have approached Atlanta over a move for Nigerian winger Ademola Lookman, but first competition for Bayern Munich for the 27-year-old. That's according to Sky Sports Germany. Galatasaray are in talks with Tottenham over a deal to sign Mali midfielder Yovis Bissouma. That's according to the Independent. While AC Milan have made an official bid to Liverpool's England midfielder Joe Gomez, 28, on a permanent transfer, with the clubs discussing terms. That's according to Fabrizio Romano. Fenerbahce are working on a deal to sign Brazilian goalkeeper Ederson Moraes, a 32, for Manchester City after tax rivals Galatasaray had a 10 million euro bid rejected. Meanwhile, Newcastle want to sign AC Roma's 30 million pound rated Ukraine striker Artem Dvovic. That's Dibok, 28, on loan with a view to buy. That's according to the Sun. While Aston Villa have agreed a deal with Aberdeen to sign 17-year-old Scotland youth international midfielder Fletcher Boyd. That's according to Football Insider. Then Unai Emery's Aston Villa are close to signing 31-year-old Sweden defender Victor Lindelof, who is available as a free agent after leaving Manchester United at the end of his contract. Speaking of free agents, also Cremonese in Italy on the verge of signing Jamie Vardy on a one-year deal plus an option to extend for another year should they stay in the top flight there. So that equally is happening, or that's part of what is happening from that side. Then quickly, Marco Asensio set to take off shortly on flight to Istanbul ahead of a permanent transfer from PSG to Fenerbahce for the 29-year-old Spanish attacker. To discuss Ademola Lookman, we'll discuss Christian Mosquera. This one did travel to London today ahead of undergoing a medical to complete a move from Bayer Leverkusen to Arsenal. So that's happening. Meanwhile, we're into added time for that game between Barcelona. We're into the 3rd minute of added time for that game between Barcelona and Vallecano. 5 minutes were added, so we're into the 3rd minute of stoppage time. We want to know who wins this one. Can Vallecano walk away with the point? Vallecano at home, really. So, but their performance, if anything, would deserve even 3 points. I have not thought that Barcelona looked sharper in the second half. I thought Rayo Vallecano have been the better team, and I stand open to differences in opinion, but that's what I really feel. Just waiting. Oh, it was a bit unorthodox in the way they did that one, but it is what it is. It is what it is. Oh, that was a cheap giveaway. Come on. That was a cheap giveaway. I didn't think it was a foul 1 minute. Not really. That was a cheap giveaway. Yep, we are into the 6 minutes of added time, waiting for the blow of the final whistle. Waiting for the blow of the final whistle. It's coming. Oh, game over. Game over. Rayo Vallecano 1, Barcelona 1. So it's finished here. It's game over. So Barcelona have dropped points, and that means that Real Madrid remain at the summits of the La Liga standings with 9 points. Athletic Bilbao with a similar tally, all unbeaten, 3 games played, 3 games won. Villarreal 7 points, Barcelona 7 points, Espanyol 7 points, Getafe 6 points, Elche 5 points, Real Betis 5 points, Valencia 4 points, Vallecano 4 points, Deportivo Alves 4 points, Sevilla 3 points, Osasuna, Celta Vigo, Real Oviedo, Atletico de Madrid 2 points. Atletico de Madrid are in 16th place on the La Liga standings, while Real Sociedad are 17th. Mallorca and Girona, Levante and Girona are complete the bottom 3, in that sort of run of things. So I don't know if Pedro will have the guts of joining us for a moment before we wrap this one up, to let us know his thoughts about the game, what his disappointments were, in as far as that result is concerned. Anyways, guys, it's been 1 hour and 13 minutes of doing this. Allow us to wrap it here and call it a night. I wish you a wonderful rest of the night. Thank you just now. Thank you so much, Pedri, and every single one of you that managed to catch today's broadcast. Let's link up again tomorrow morning and discuss the rest, because it's going to be an international break. So expect a bit of laxity. Tomorrow, expect a lot of news regarding transfers as we wrap up the transfer window, the summer transfer window. So stay blessed, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye for now.